Welcome everyone to Unity Live. I'm Emily Ghosh Harris,
Brooklin, Rayne.
and we are so excited for an incredible evening today. We are going to be talking about returning to our prime state of being.
Yeah.
And we're opening up with the intention for all those tuning in live and those listening to the recording to connect with the highest vibrational frequencies of healing, love, and expansion.
Yeah. We are excited to connect as a one community of light and welcome this beautiful being that has agreed to join us and speak this evening.
Yes, and our guest is an incredible being with a beautiful heart of service, a vibrational geneticist, Jeilene Tracey, who channels light and sound to make shifts in your emotional and physical elements of the body. And Jaylene is here with us as a healer who works with multidimensional light beings, and we're just so grateful for you joining us. Welcome, Jaylene.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Nice to see you both.
Yeah, we're so excited to get into a little bit about um, you know let everybody who's joined us here today who may not have previously heard you speak to tell them a little bit about how you landed here in this moment on your journey and some of the highlights of and what you find to be most um, impactful about your journey from going from the transition from biotech to this now moment.
Yeah. And it was I think for all of us, the journey of unfolding once we start on this path, takes so many twists and turns, and there's so many interesting things that happen along the way. So I'll just kind of, like you said, touch on some of the salient points, which is that I was in biotech and I had been working in that industry for a long time. And I really love science. I just knew from a little kid that I was going to be in science. It was never a question for me. I never had that moment of, I wonder what I'm going to do with my life. Was always super clear to me. And it was always clear that I wanted to work with DNA. So that was the path that I took. And I'm happy that that came full circle for me and actually entered into my metaphysical work too. But while I was in industry, I just got to a point. I have three kids, and I got to a point where I was just feeling pulled in too many directions. I had started on my spiritual path, a few years at this point into it, and didn't have time to really pursue any of that just because commuting up to San Francisco from Santa Cruz, where I live, was very far, having three kids and who were pretty little at the time, and just life was too busy. And I just wanted more time to expand into it. I wanted more time to spend with my kids. I wanted more time to just live and get off the treadmill. So luckily, we were in a position where I could take some time off. And then I really dove into the different modalities that I wanted to study. I had already taken a year of witchcraft, which was really fun. It was kind of like a survey course, and this is shamanism, and this is Reiki, and this is how you work with energy. And it was a really good entryway into all of this. And then I did Reiki, and I took lots of different Reiki classes, and I always call Reiki the gateway drug because I think that that's where so many of us have started. You take that one Reiki class and you get those attunements, and suddenly, it just blows open your pineal, and then you're having all these wonderful experiences. So that was the same for me. And then I just started meeting with a group of people, like-minded people. There was only three or four of us at first, and we would meet every Wednesday night, and we would practice with each other. We'd practice channeling, and I just learned all these different things that I could do through that connection with those trusted friends of mine. And we still meet to this day, even though it's years later. But anyway, I would take different healing modalities, and one that I studied was body talk, which I really loved. And during my training and during my certification, if anyone's ever heard me talk, they've probably heard me say this before, so I'll keep it short. But I started to connect with the Mantis, and they started to give me lots of information about what was going on in people's bodies and helping me to understand the bigger picture, a deeper understanding of the energy behind the physical manifestation of disease. And I think that physical issues are a doorway that a lot of people walk through to understand more about themselves, that a physical issue will arise, but it's really the underscoring, energetic pattern that has been present in their field for a long time that created that physical imbalance in the first place. So the Mantis just taught me a lot about understanding those and working with past lives and Akashic records and ancestor energy and deep soul healing. And I'm just so grateful to them. We've been partnered ever since, and that was about, gosh, 3.5 years ago. And it's just been an awesome ride with them. We developed a healing modality called Vibrational Genetics that you mentioned, and we really did that together. And just this last fall, I started teaching it, and that's been super fun for me. It really was a tour de force for me to write down everything that I do with them. And I never really actually thought that I could describe what they do with me because I thought it was very personal. But they said, no, of course not. That's not why we do this with you. We want you to be the guinea pig, right? That goes out and then tells everybody else how to work with us. And the mantis themselves have started to come more and more obviously into people's energy fields, and they're showing up more and more for people to work with them now. And that's because we're going through all these major transitions on the planet, and we're getting hit with all these amazing plasma cosmic waves. And as our bodies and our DNA is getting upgraded, they've been helping me along with the Arcturians to really move through those energy shifts and changes in a peaceful way that allows us to absorb the transitions into our DNA and then express those. So it's been a really wonderful, exciting relationship with them, um, and I love sharing who they are and what they are, because I think at one point they used to get a bad rap. So I'm happy for people to understand what they truly are.
Yeah, I love that you said that because, with just like most collectives, right? There are sub collectives, within, let's say the particular star system, or so
Mm-hmm.
your
Right.
relationship with this particular collective of Mantis. Can you tell us a little bit about them? Do they distinguish, what dimensional framework that they most work within and these types of things?
Yeah, they are an amazing group. So there are thousands of them, really, and they're a large group of them that have come to be in the Earth's dimensional fields. And basically, the mantis are in general creators of energy systems. They create planetary energy systems. So with Earth, they work in collaboration with Earth and seed DNA on this planet to generate life and to watch that life flourish. What they've told me is that generally speaking, they plant the seeds of life on a particular planet, and then they hang back and they watch and they don't intervene too much, which is why they have told me that, they're intervening now more with humans, but to date, they have not been doing a lot of intervening. Now, other people have talked about them being present on ships and during abduction experiences, but this group that I'm working with, which is a large group, is really focused on seeding life in this on this planet and on several other planets. So they've named 11 other planets besides Earth that they have this whole. They're like labs, right? So for them, it's like experimentation labs. They're very scientific. They have taught me a lot about genetics, even that I wasn't aware of. And so they're really masters at bringing about life systems and supporting those energetically, healing those, and allowing those to flourish. And humans are part of this whole web of life here. So that's why they're interested in helping our evolution. And we have such a big impact on Earth's evolution, and she has such an impact on ours. And so it makes sense that they help us to symbiotically work with Earth's energy to, continue our own evolution and expansion, and that's a big part of what they teach and how we work together.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've had a few um, wonderful opportunities to connect with some of them, and they generally come in relationship when working with others with the physical body, but also
Mm-hmm.
too to they will come in here and there and just drop in some pretty profound downloads on like
Yeah.
specific foods and crops, and and show like this whole matrices of you know, sort of distortion away from the original blueprint of which they assisted in the seeding,
Yeah,
I imagine, right? And so,
right.
yeah, so I'm excited to hear more about, what you're doing now with all of this. I know you said you're teaching, and that's
Mhm.
really exciting. So I know we'll get into a little bit more about, what your offerings are and these types of things as we move forward this evening. I
Yeah.
know one thing that we were both really excited to ask is, do the Mantis have anything in particular, that's sort of on the forefront of what they desire to kind of bring into human awareness as we're moving into these uncharted waters and, the interesting energies of 2022.
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. And they certainly have. In fact, today I'd say is a pretty auspicious day. Today is the 11th of the first month, so it's 111 and it's 22, right? So it's a really amazing day actually where the energy shifted. I'd say last night. I don't know about you guys. You guys get any sleep last night? I did not. I think I was awake all night long and I woke up with not feeling like I'd pulled an all-nighter. I felt totally normal and I thought, okay, all right, the energy just shifted. I feel a big change. And they told me that was going to happen right around the 10th and the 11th, and certainly did. And so this is an exciting time for us because, as I mentioned before, our DNA is really getting upgraded right now. And so they have been coaching us on really how to shift our awareness out of our brain and out of our mind and into heart frequency. And I know that that gets a lot of lip service, that process, like, oh, be in your heart and, think for your heart. And it's one thing to talk about it, and then it's another thing to actually practice it on the daily and on the minute to minute, right? We have to keep reminding ourselves because we're so trained to think with our brains. Normal, right? That's the way we were brought up in the society. But to shift function and direction to your heart is basically like saying, I'm going to allow my higher self to do all the driving for me. And I'm going to allow my higher self to make the decisions and to be the one that really shifts me in the direction of my highest potential. And that's really the only way to really step into the openness and the freedom of allowing the upgrades to the DNA to happen. Because when we're in that, monkey mind, there's no way that your whole body is going to be in a physical state or an energetic state to receive those upgrades. And instead, it ends up looking like chaos to you because the energy is so intense right now that's blowing through the planet. We know that. We started to feel it last fall really intensely. It really started to ramp up. And we had a little reprieve there for the last couple of weeks. And I just, last night, it's like someone turned the spigot back on. So again, they're saying, okay, another round of upgrades for the DNA. So what should we all do with that? We've really got to stay in that place of peace. And humans, we're wired as reptilian organisms, right? We evolved through that phase. And so, because of that, we have these trigger happy nervous systems that very easily go into fight, flight, freeze, or faint,
Mhm.
right? Or the other one's FOMO, which I like to add, which is, fear of missing out, because that causes stress too.
Certainly
And
does.
but all these things, little things that cause stress in our body and cause us to either resist or recoil or hide. It's the little things, and that happens, maybe 20 times a day because there's something in your field that you kind of mount a little resistance to. All of that adds up to a lot of blocking in your energy field of these upgrades that are coming in because we have all lived through Atlantis. We've lived through Lemurian times. We've lived through other cataclysmic moments on this planet, whether it was meteor strikes or what have you. So we have memory, cellular memory of these things happening. And the energy is very similar to that on the planet right now because we're moving through a big transition. It doesn't mean that we're going to have cataclysm of the natural kind and that the earth is going to go into, a winter, but it does mean that the energy right now is really, really triggering for us because we've lived through this. It's in our genetic lineage as well as our energetic lineage. So, because of that, it's really important that we constantly remind ourselves, come back to center, come back to center, get back in my body. Oh, I feel like I popped out of my body again because I wasn't comfortable. Pull my energy back into my body, ground into the earth, focus on the two chakras at the soles of your feet. That is another thing that she's been bringing up a lot with almost everybody I've been working with. She'll go right to the soles of the feet and activate those chakras right there, because we've got to be constantly anchoring ourselves into earth so that all of this cosmic stuff that's, doing a number on our pineal and our crown chakra and opening us wide open, it's all good stuff. It's increasing our perception and increasing our ability to connect with each other. But it really does a number on us if we're not grounded into the earth and anchoring ourselves into our home planet, because we are biological organisms that are part of her body, and everything that makes us up comes from her, right? So we need to go back to that home base, and that's really what going back to your prime blueprint is all about, right? It's like returning back to home. Your soul came in and incarnated in that moment that it arrived here, and it did so with this prime blueprint of energy. And that gets distorted as we live and as we go through life and as we have these experiences. And then there's the whole Akashic soul information coming in, the stuff that you planned on clearing while you were here, right? And then we've had all this really amazing energy that's fostered that process of clearing all that gunk out of our energy field, really down to the deepest origins of our soul. That's what I've been experiencing with clients over the past years. And so that leaves us in this place where we can answer the call and really engage in what's going on right now. But like she said to me the other day, the training wheels are off. Hey, now it's time for us to actively engage in this energy instead of trying to hide from it and saying, like, oh, it's too much for me today, I'm not going to deal. No, that's like, no, come forward, lean into it, engage with it, and become the master of how to work with it, and start to do that so you can choose your timeline as opposed to the timelines unconsciously unfolding in front of you. Start to really operate from the heart and then match a frequency that puts you on a timeline of what you would like to experience.
Profound. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, have such an inner smile, and I know you do too, Em, because so much of what you're bringing through is coming through, in big waves, right? And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like ever since, I mean, for a while now, but certainly since the beginning of the new year, almost in every session and transmission, it's, coming back into the physical body. This is about ascension, right?
Yes.
It's about
Yes.
transforming and transcending the DNA while, bringing in more of the oversoul. And so
Right.
one thing that I would love to hear your perspective on is, what's your favorite, like, what are your favorite suggestions for grounding? Like, are there anything, is there anything additionally to those practices that we most, commonly hear about and come by?
Yeah. So, one thing that the Mantis have taught me about is using the voice to create a vibration through the body to really bring ourselves back into that place of origin. The voice is one of the most potent ways of doing that because sound is the fabric of the universe. And so when we tone naturally, I always tell people, look, it doesn't have to be pretty. I'm not a trained singer. Anyone's heard my meditations knows that. But you just allow it to flow out from you. You can chant if you're more comfortable with that. Any kind of elongated vowel sound or elongated tone, it creates a vibration in your body. And the most important thing, I think, is to really let go while you tone and just to let whatever sound wants to come out, because that's going to reflect your energy field in that moment that way. And if you don't try and control it and make it sound a certain way, that's the big difference, I think, between singing and toning, is that with toning, we're channeling our higher self to just express our energy field in the form of sound. And singing is much more regimented and structured, right? This is a true expression of your soul energy in that moment. And if it comes out sounding nasty, that's because you're having a moment, and that's great. And let it come out and be loud and kind of screechy. And then eventually it'll smooth out and it'll go into a beautiful place. And then you will feel a lot better too. So I always say use the toning. It's free, it's easy. And even if it's, 0 degrees outside and you can't go outside and get your bare feet on the ground, which is also preferable, you can at least do the toning, and you can also connect to your body. I also like to do the 5 movements. I have those on my website. They're free, but it's a series of 5 movements that are a little bit Qigong-esque, but the Mantis gave them to me as a way of getting back into that prime state of being. And so I do the toning with the 5 movements. It's like a V, and then it's like this, and then you point your arms down, you put them on your heart, and then you put them in front of you like this.
Good.
Love that.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, so you do that series of 5 while toning, and it really just realigns you completely back in your body and
Mm.
grounds you into the earth.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, there's something so powerful about receiving, being on the receiving end of sound healing and
Uh-huh.
but to actually activate your own throat chakra and to practice toning yourself, I feel like it is just profound.
It is, and they've also taught me that it helps you to touch into different vibrational frequencies that way too. So you asked about the frequency that the mantis usually tend to inhabit, and the answer is that they're in all of the frequencies because they really part of their purpose and when they were created was to learn how to create life in all frequencies. And so it's sort of master level to create life in the third dimension, right? In the second and the first. But when we tone, we transport ourselves through those frequencies and allow ourselves to shift into those higher dimensional states as well. So I really love it for that too. And for allowing, but while we are embodied, like you said, it's we want to be in the body and then create the awareness of the higher frequency as opposed to popping out and sort of floating out there and doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. I know one thing that's been coming in a lot, for myself, which then, as we know, when we're connecting in community, et cetera, it usually starts coming in and through, because of course we are one, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
collective is really going into, and it's not to say it's different than previous times, but it seems even exponentially more I don't know, present in the field and coming through um, concerning, really focusing on micronutrient densities
Mm.
and live
Mm-hmm.
foods and really like assisting the cells in receiving, again, like similarly to the grounding,
Yep.
it almost sounds counterintuitive because going really light and, not necessarily raw because some people, can't do that. But if you can do it,
Right.
can really kind of elevate, and almost feel ungrounding in certain ways. But it feels like both of those things are coming in sort of equal proportion. And I wondered if that was sort of your experience as of recent as well.
Yeah, I have to agree. So, Mari is the name of my mantis guide that I work with most commonly. She really encouraged me about a month ago to start taking quite a bit of spirulina and chlorella. And I think that that's for that purpose that we're not only removing a lot of energy, but the energy of those plants is just, or that algae is so strong and it's so potent and it's so good for us. It's appreciated by our mitochondria, right? And our cells need that mitochondria to be activated right now. We need that energy. We need that immunity function and proper immune function. Everything we're going through right now is a transition. Even the virus, everything is part of our transition, right? So I don't view any of it as bad. I just see it as these are some of the growing pains of going through this transition. And everything that we can do to support our microbiome and to support our mitochondria, which is another part of our microbiome, really, and all the cells in our body, which are really directed by our microbiome, I think are really, really beneficial to moving through this transition with more peace and ease. So yeah, I couldn't agree more about the micronutrients. We've got to feed those mitochondria, and that's what they eat.
Yeah, I love that. A friend who's deep on the path as well recently, I had done them separately, the spirulina in the past and the chlorella. And I had, been doing the chlorella pellets for quite some time and I took a little
Hmm.
break and they had recommended this particular blend of the two of them. And I literally just received them yesterday and just started taking them.
Ah, that's so great. That's
I
so
love
great.
that that's coming through, because it's just, a beautiful confirmation. So thank you for,
Yeah, and and cyanobacteria were the first organisms on our planet, right? This is like part of for the mantis. They say, this is where we first seeded life, as we have to, they had to change the atmosphere. They had to generate a lot of information and oxygen, and they did that through these that came to Earth also through different asteroids and meteorites that came to the planet and seeded it. And they just, they're farmers. They're farmers. They just but they said, bring it back to the basics. Go back to the basics of cyanobacteria. You cannot go wrong. It has everything you need. You could pretty much live off of it, is basically what they told me. That and crystal clear water that is activated. They said, you'd be pretty golden. I don't recommend that anyone just live off spirulina and chlorella. I think you'd get too skinny, but I do think that for the most part, and also we're living in a very dense time, so sometimes you do need some grounding of some heavier foods. But
yeah.
those two things, because of that vibrational frequency they have, are really important right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I know I'm hogging all the questions, sorry. But I just have one more question as you brought it up. So water, right? I mean,
Yes.
we've been connecting, more and more and more with the sacred source consciousness of water, understanding it
Yes.
in such expanded ways from that which we've been kind of taught in a limited scope of, perception. Um, from what you've been receiving in way of guidance and your own journey, what are some of the recommendations for systems and or ways in which you recommend people interact with their water? Are there
Yeah.
particular things? I know like hydrogen water is like a really big
Mm-hmm.
thing, and ozone water, and of
Mm-hmm.
course we program our water and pray into it and connect with it as the consciousness
Right.
is. But are there additional things, or of those things, are there particular combinations you recommend?
Right. Well, I kind of keep it pretty simple. I don't tend to go for some of the more gimmicky things, but the one thing that I will say is that I have Dr. Gerald Pollack's book about the fourth phase of water, and that is how water becomes more viscous when it's electrically charged, right? And that can happen through sunlight or through movement, right? Vortexing it or shaking it or spinning it. So I got myself one of those water spinners and I really like it. I think it's the Mayu water spinner. I really like it and it does aerate the water. And so, and it moves it, it spins it. And so can notice that I have a nice filter at my house and then I use that. And then when I'm putting it into the jug, I'll say an intention for it. And I think that water, because of its crystalline structure and because we're crystalline in nature, it responds so amazing. It's like a crystal, right? It just responds, that structure of water. It's like it's made to um, receive information and then relay that information, and it's a messenger. So water can easily hold information, and we just have to remember that. And so that when we're serving it or putting it into our glass is just to give it that intention and that idea of what it means to us. And we won't always remember every time we're taking a sip of water, and you don't really need to. But I think that if you take a moment occasionally and think, oh, this is going to go right into my cells. And my cells are made of mostly water, and my whole body is made of mostly water. So there's so much importance for the crystalline structure of me and the crystalline structure of this substance that I'm bringing into my body. And what can I do to help it be a good vibrational match for me? And because everything is about vibrational matching. And so, what can I do to amplify my vibration by bringing this clear crystal substance into my body that is carrying this intention of mine? And it's like a loop, right? If you put an intention into something and then bring it right back into your body, it's like the intention came from you and then it comes back to you, and it magnifies in that way. So it's just a beautiful way. And I love the work that Dr. Pollack did in discovering that water is more viscous in our cells. And so when we create that viscosity of the water that we drink, it's easier for our cells to absorb it, and it's got the right ion charge, and it helps us to heal that way. It helps it to be more efficient. And I don't know, just helps the body function better, I think.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'd love to ask you about the energies of this upcoming year. You know, everything that you
Mm.
shared from fall of last year up until like even, these past 2 days were spot on. I felt like, at least from my own perspective, and I'm sure many of us can relate to that. So I'd love to know, anything that we can expect or to kind of help us navigate through the coming year ahead.
Yeah, let me just tune into the Mantis right now and see what they have to say because it's always nice to get a fresh perspective. And today is such a big shift day that it's good to just hear what they have to say. So, the first thing that Mari is telling me is that there are going to be some challenges this year for a lot of us, and that this is something that she mentioned in a newsletter I just sent out is that there are going to be many of us that come to a crossroads where we need to make a decision and we need to decide, okay, I'm no longer going to do what I was doing, or I'm not going to do the same thing in the same way. I'm going to do the same thing but in a different way, or relationships will come to an impasse or things. And that happened to some degree last year, but this year we're going to see that the individual will be the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so the macrocosm will be some of these big institutional systems that we have come to rely on are going to start shifting and morphing. It doesn't mean that it's going to be cataclysmic, like they're all going to fall apart and there's going to be chaos, but it does mean that there's going to be structural changes in the foundations of those things so that they need to be really rebuilt or restructured from the inside out. And for those systems that respond to that and engage in that from a place of good intention are going to have the easiest time of it. And those systems that really dig their feet in and try to stay the way they are, those are the ones that are really going to suffer because, and I'd say that that's a metaphor for all of us, right? If you dig your heels in this year and you try to keep things the way that they are and you try and resist the change, you're really going to have a difficult time. But if you can flow with the change and just say, okay, today's another day to expect the unexpected. And we're all getting somewhat used to that now, expecting the unexpected. It's kind of becoming the way of things, right? But, it'll be bigger things in your life. It'll be the bigger items that none of us really want certain things to change because we like the way they are, possibly, or even if we don't really like the way they are, but we're not really wanting to go through the pain of the change because change can be uncomfortable and painful and difficult. So it's kind of like, oh, I don't want to do that, but you're probably going to be at some kind of crossroads where it's going to feel like you have to pivot in one direction or the other and you don't really have a choice. That's your choice is to make a choice. So to stay in active choice all year is going to be super important. So that's one thing that she definitely wanted to convey. And to try and keep ourselves out of the fear that is going to occur when we watch some of our larger institutions start to unravel a bit. Whether it be a financial system or whether it be a school system or some of the things that we've come to rely on that we take for granted that are always going to be there. We need to remember that as they unravel, it's a necessary part of the ability for them to come back together and be better. And so practicing ways of keeping yourself calm and centered are going to be really important this year, as we touched on earlier. Um, Let me see what else the Mantis. They're really excited about the June timeframe. So around May and June, we have a lot of eclipses occurring, I think. If I have that right, the energy is going to be very palpable, they're saying, in June. And it's going to be a time to what she's showing me right now, like a phoenix arising right now. So from the ashes, the phoenix arises. So there's probably something pretty monumental that happens in May, but from that, some very exciting new directions are birthed into form in June. So May and June have been, over the past 3 years, a time when some pretty big transitions have occurred for us. Last year on the 26th of May, right, we moved into the sixth sun. That was a big deal. So we're getting used to living in this new divine feminine energy, right? We're getting used to dipping down into the earth for our wisdom and for our power. We're getting used to operating from this place. And it is a transition, though, for all of us to identify with more of that aspect of ourselves. We're going to see more easing of gender between the sexes and the young people because for them, they're living life as an energetic being embodied as a human. They're very much not as concerned with their sexuality being one direction or the other. They're operating from a place of neutrality. So that's exciting for humans because it's a big step actually in the right direction for us as evolving sentient beings. Because how many extraterrestrial beings from higher dimensions have you met that say, very specifically, I'm a female and I only do these things because I'm a female, or I'm a male and I only do these things because I'm a male. The higher our frequency is, the less we identify with the paradigms of being male or female. We start to come into a place of unification of the divine feminine and masculine within our energy field, and we no longer feel the need to identify as much with either side. So that's an exciting thing that's happening to humanity. And that is going to be a growing pain that we go through because it'll be difficult for people through that transition, but eventually it'll be easier. And everyone can, obviously, everyone is free to express themselves as feminine or masculine as they want to. And it's not that they will suffer if they do that. It's just more to the point that everybody's coming to a place of more neutrality around that, which will be important for us and will probably ameliorate a lot of the issues on this planet as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Let me see if there's anything else she wants to say. It's interesting she brought that up. She doesn't usually talk about sexuality. But she's saying it's a big pivot point for us as a species in our evolution. She's saying we're making some pretty big leaps forward in our evolutionary timeline. But again, choose your timeline, be very engaged in the process of creating a frequency within your body so that you can match the timelines that feel good to you and that are engaged and exciting for you.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful way
Yeah.
to walk into, and I'll say walk, and I feel that's appropriate in the, what comes through with grounding. But walking into, the 2022, really embodying and engaging and dropping into the heart and being even more in that place of witnessing presence. Because certainly I know we've all heard it from our guides and beings and collectives in so many ways for so many years, just like over and over and over again.
Right.
The history of present moment and connection and through the heart and the 0 point and wow, it feels like it's really going to pay off in
Yes.
these next few linear years of such massive transformation. And to your sharing, so many different waves of energy that are just really opportunities for expansion, and moving out of contraction and getting comfortable with change.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The Arcturians have also been really present, and they, I feel, are very close to humanity because they've gone through a similar transition that we have, and their vibrational frequency is easy for us to tap into because they feel very close to us. And they have been, participating in and caretaking humanity as well on our journey of evolution. And they're all excited. The Mantis, the Arcturians, excuse me, they're all excited because we are hitting a place where I think it's getting probably even more fun for them because they've been working with us for so long. And it's like, wow, you guys, you're starting to really respond now. Your DNA is changing. Your DNA is getting to a point of evolution where they can start to interact with us in a more telepathic and more, I'd say, continual way, right? Instead of just having brief little interludes with them, once our DNA gets to a place of expression that allows us to have more continual communication with higher dimensional beings, it's going to be great because they've been trying to work with us for so long, but it's so hard for so many humans to hear them or to engage or even know that they're there, right? But more and more people are saying, like, oh, yeah, hey, that's not so weird that there are extra dimensional beings around me. It actually feels quite normal. I don't even know why I think that, but I just do. And it's because their awareness is shifting and they're expanding into being able to recognize these things as not so foreign, but actually part of your energy field, part of your lineage, right?
Mhm.
Part of who you are. It's just another aspect of all of us. We've lived these lifetimes on different planets, and
Yeah,
yeah, that's
I love that.
it's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
hopeful.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.
I feel like one of the themes of this year, related to dropping, more into our heart space is, being of greater service. And I'm sure, this community, especially
Hmm.
joining us, is particularly, connected to that. And I know that you've shared a good amount about really exploring gifts and how to really activate and expand. And I'd love to see if you could share a little bit more about that. And especially for those that maybe, from an empathic perspective, maybe shut those gifts down early on and
Mm.
are,
Hmm.
beginning to reconnect and explore.
Yeah, that's a great question, Emily, because I do think that the reason the mantis are coming forward more now in a more obvious way for more people is because they do want us to understand that we are all gifted in our own way to serve one another and to serve the collective and to serve Earth. That's why they asked me to start teaching, right? Because they want more and more people to feel comfortable in their own knowing. We all have our own unique energy field, and we have our unique way of working with each other and working with ourselves, working with Earth. And they have let me know that there's not a single human that isn't capable in some way of impacting another human energetically because we're all wired to do so. We are electromagnetic sensing organisms that are responsive to our field, right? We're responsive and we respond to things that we can't even sense or feel, obviously, but we know our sixth sense knows it, our body knows it. Those cells in our pineal know it, right? They're responding, and our consciousness just needs to catch up. So I would recommend that everyone spend time being quiet, going within, and just setting the intention to first raise your vibration and allow your consciousness to expand, and then just to ask the question. Start to do automatic writing, start to ask those questions. How can I best serve Earth? How can I best serve the collective? How can I best serve my family, my friends, myself? Um, with the mantis, I noticed that um, at the time that I met them, I had been studying different modalities, and I would have little glimpses of connecting to spirit in a really important or not important, but in a really meaningful way, I should say. And then that would kind of go away, and I used to say, oh, I don't feel connected today, or I lost my connection. And I think that's something that a lot of us feel sometimes when we're on this path before we have a really strong kind of concrete and always connection, is that we feel that some days we're connected to spirit, but other days we just feel totally kind of blocked from it. And I think that has a lot to do with the foods we're eating, the toxin load in our body, the way that we're energetically carrying ourselves, the way that we're blocking that energy, because they are always there. That's one thing I have learned. They are always there. They're always around us. They're always ready to assist. And as soon as I stepped in service, boy, the mantis just showed up big time. As soon as I agreed, because I was being a little bit, I know that that is a big part of my path is to be here in service. But when I was younger, I just wanted to play. And, I had some experiences as a kid and then I really shut it down. I turned the spigot off because I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to play. I want to play. I want to have a good time. And I would play and I would play and I'd play and I'd hurt myself and they'd keep me from killing myself, like, accidentally, by diving off a rock and hitting my head, but I'm using that as an example to say that I felt like they were always watching over me and keeping me from really doing something stupid. But I was pretty much like hardcore. I don't want to do this. I want to play. the second I changed my mind, they showed up like that, like, okay. And they don't really care how long it takes you, by the way, because time is not the same for them, right? You can do it today, you can do it in 10 years. They're still going to be there and they're still going to show up for you and they're still going to help you to serve because that is truly at the base and the core of all of us is to be here in service to the overall energy field evolution of all, right?
Yeah, wonderful.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
So many, I feel like I have so many questions, but
Okay.
there's also some things that I know that might be too big of a can of worms to,
Yeah, some things are a little bit of a can of worms, but
yeah,
you can ask anything, whatever it is.
Yeah, one thing I did want to ask is about the detox because you mentioned, there's different, ways that our field could be impacted, and I've heard you, share about sugar.
Yes.
Yeah, is there anything else that you would like to mention?
Well, I would say just in general that we live in a very toxic environment right now. And whether it's from medications or from, yeah, and sometimes we need medications, right? But we have to also have a good protocol for detoxing after we bring in something that's made in a lab versus something that came out of the earth. Pretty much everything that we eat that comes out of a box or a bag is going to have some kind of chemicals in it that is foreign to our body. Our body has to process those. Your liver has to deal with them. Your microbiome has to make sense out of it. And it has to try and pull out the micronutrients from those things, transmute them into something that your body can use, right? The cells of your body can use, that your mitochondria can use. So I think that because of this world that we live in that is chemical, 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 right? Ever since the 50s and 60s, it's just been chemicals laden in our food, growing them, processing them, packaging them, and making them last longer. So it's just not natural for us to have to process that much toxin load. So I do love detox methods. I'm usually drinking detox tea of some sort at some point throughout the day. I like the one by Puka, I think is how you say it. I really like their detox tea. I again use the chlorella and the spirulina for that same purpose, especially the chlorella. I eat a lot of organic whole foods just to keep my system moving. And the other major thing is fiber, 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 fiber. I talk about this a lot, but if you want to normalize sugar in your body and you want to normalize the ability of your body to excrete and expel toxins, you've got to make sure that you're feeding your microbiome enough fiber of all different sorts and not just one type of fiber, but really the rainbow of fiber so that it can produce all of the mucus and all the other stuff to keep your gut lining healthy, to make the garden grow, right? They make the soil for the other microbes to be there. So to me, that's really important. It comes down to the basics. You've got to take care of your microbiome and you've got to feed them what they want to eat. And if you do, and you keep that system nurtured, and I sing to my microbiome all the time, they love it when you sing to them. Stress is really hard on them. Singing is really good, or toning. If you keep that system functional and helping you to detox, I think it goes a long way. And you basically take care of yourself and you avoid most of the stuff that's pretty junky. I mean, obviously, you're going to go out occasionally, you're going to have a cocktail, or you're going to go out and you're going to, be with friends and you're going to eat out at a restaurant and they're going to use some weird fats or things that you shouldn't eat. We don't want to have to be a monk, but we want to have good systems for clearing our body after. There's an herb that I take called microgard that I really like. If I'm ever going to eat something that is going to imbalance my system and my microbiome, that I find like, whoop, brings me right back. So I really like that. And then, like I said, the herbs and the teas and the chlorella. And what else do I use for? I just drink a lot of water too. Drink a lot of water, healthy water in my system. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. And I'm always talking about this, but exercise, 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 exercise. You've got to sweat. So much of your toxins come out through your skin. And if you're not sweating, you are leaving tons and tons of toxins in your body. So you gotta sweat. Hot yoga, awesome. Anything you do when you're hot and you're sweaty is the best. You gotta sweat. Sauna, whatever you do. but also getting your heart rate up and moving your lymph system is one of the best things you can do for your microbiome. It's creates diversity, happy microbes, happy body, happy systems. So, if you're outside walking in the sunshine, that's great. You don't have to be super, super vigorous with your exercise, but it does need to be pretty regular. So, those are the things that I do that I find keeps me even:
Mhm.
toning, detoxing, and exercising. I'd say is the trifecta of health for me.
Wonderful.
Such awesome tips. What about a probiotic or prebiotic do you recommend?
Yeah, so prebiotics, I generally just go natural, but there are a lot of prebiotics on the market right now. But I think if you're eating a balanced diet, you're going to get all those fibers. And if I really like, as a prebiotic, I just like to get it from food, and I really like mung beans. They're super high in fiber, and they provide a lot of that good prebiotic and probiotic fiber. Um, for a probiotic, it depends really where you are. If your microbiome is really out of whack and it's in a dysbiotic state, then I would recommend something like Megaspore Biotic to rebuild your community. Or I really like Zach Bush's products that help restore, right? I think it's called Restore, if he's still calling it that. Um, so rebuilding the lining and maintaining the integrity of your gut lining, I think, is really important. But generally speaking, you should do it through food. If I'm ever feeling a little clogged up, I'll use flax seeds. I like to do it naturally. I don't, or with herbs. I don't like to use anything that creates too much disruption in the gut, because the microbes don't like it, and they tell me when I'm in somebody's body and they're like, "You're not happy," they get pretty unhappy. So keeping them happy is usually the main game. So lots of fiber, variety of fibers. And you have to know also that a lot of vegetables don't have that much fiber in them. We think, oh, I'm just eating salad and vegetables, but a lot of them actually don't have tons of fiber. So if you want prebiotic fibers, you have to eat things that are going to be more like, green banana flour has a lot of prebiotic fiber in it, or sunchokes. Um, Onions and leeks and garlic and things like that, they have a lot of that fiber in it, the prebiotic fibers. So they call it resistant starch. Cold potatoes have resistant starch in them. So there's specific foods, and you can look up for the list of resistant starches, and those are the ones that are going to help you produce the butyrates and the propionates and things that you need as the precursors to serotonin and other happy hormones in the body to keep us well balanced.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So, it's a curiosity. If someone were to decide that they were just going to become completely, do complete liquids, so,
Yeah.
juices, I have a curiosity. Does the, does the digestive system then become almost like, is there a sense of atrophy that takes place? Whereby, because you're not eating the fiber, because you're not getting those types of things, is that sustainable? Because I know there are, a fair amount of people out there that,
That are doing
really
that.
like the idea of going liquid and then eventually transitioning into,
Yeah,
breatharian.
breatharianism. So, your microbiome is the most adaptable thing on this planet, right? Microbes are adaptable. So, honestly, I really believe that they can adapt to just about any kind of environment. Your microbial community is going to change dramatically. Your microbial community can change dramatically if, you change your diet dramatically for a weekend, and then, or you don't get enough sleep, or, your epigenetics and your microbiome change a lot from pretty um, small things, or from small shifts that we make. So, when we make a really big shift like that, it's going to change the landscape of your microbiome. But there are people that are doing it, and there are people that are living for years and years and years. So, what I think is that your microbiome just responds and adapts, because we see that these little microbes can live at temperatures in, hundreds and hundreds of degrees, right? In those thermal vents, and in Yosemite, and the pits that they look like sulfur pits, and you find microbes there. So if they can handle that, then they can handle a juice diet. They will adapt, and your body will adapt too. I don't know in the long term what the effects are. Let's just ask Mari what she has to say about that. She's saying that one of the benefits of doing something like that and the breatharianism in general is that you do maintain a higher frequency and you do come into a place of lightness of being. It is, meat, especially, and some of the heavier foods. Uh, it's just, these are all forms of energy, right? And the human body lives off energy. And when you bring in a denser food, you're bringing in a denser form of energy, and your body has to process that and break it down. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to break that down and process it. So, yes, your current microbiome needs a lot of fiber to process and keep your digestion because you're eating a lot of foods that need to pass through and you're getting exposed to a lot of toxins. But if you switch into liquid, your microbiome is going to shift too, and then you're going to respond to that new environment and create a community that enjoys that environment. Now, once you're in that environment, you have to know that it's hard to switch back to solid foods. You'd have to do so quite gradually because your microbiome will be ready to do the liquids, not the solids. Um, but eventually, long term, it feels like, um, it would be very important, and I would say this to anyone who's embarking on breatharianism too, to stay very grounded because being an embodied human being that is vibrating at a very high place leads to a little bit of, or I would say, can lead to people losing their minds a bit. So they do need to stay grounded and they need to stay in their body and they need to stay connected to this experience as a human because that's what they came here to do. And to not sort of flit off and kind of let themselves spend too much time into realms of expression that are not congruent with this one.
Mm.
It's it's a bit of a transition, right? It's you're up here, but this is where your body is, and so you're a package deal. You got to take it all.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Do we have some questions? Are you open for a few questions? Do you have time?
sure. Yeah, sure.
And perhaps as we're going through, I know that there's, some that have come through in the chat. Jaylene, if you could share with our audience, different ways that they might be able to work with you or any special offers that you have currently.
Yeah. So I have my course that I'm teaching is the Vibrational Genetics course. If anyone wants to learn how to connect to the Mantis and work with them in a closer way, I would really recommend taking that course. I just taught it live. I have a recorded version that's on my website. And then I'm also going to teach it live again, which is a really nice experience because you get connected to a group of people that you can practice with. And I'm going to start that again in probably April. So that's one way to connect with me. I do lots and lots of one-on-one sessions, which I always love to connect with people that way, especially when I'm first getting to know them. It's really nice to work with them one-on-one. And I can put a link. Can I add a link to or I can send you guys a link and you can put it in the show notes maybe.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for that. And so I have an online group called the Light Vibes Community, which I really love. It's been a real joy of mine to build this community and to have a close knit group of people that every month I bring information to, and we do meditations and activations together. And I bring them the latest information from the Mantis, the Arcturians, or whomever else is coming in. And so that is another way to connect in that community, the Light Vibes community, and that can be found on my website, which is jaylenetracey.com or lightvibesnetwork.com. Either one works. And so that's like a monthly community. And yeah, then the other way is that I have like lots of courses on my website as well. So any of those ways, and I would love to connect with your audience like that. And I was going to say, my sessions, I have two prices for them, and one is if you're in that community, and one if you're not. And I'd love to offer your listeners my community price for the sessions, which is a lot less.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you.
Wow.
That is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And we will absolutely send that out by email after tonight's show. Um, we did receive a couple questions that came through. One is about the mantis, and Layla is asking about um, them not perhaps the body doesn't like vinegar, and
Mhm.
wondering if that would perhaps include sort of all fermented foods like sauerkraut and kombucha.
Oh, okay. So no, it doesn't. The body and your microbiome really loves, and I actually forgot to mention fermented foods. So thanks, Layla, for bringing that up. Fermented foods are a great thing for your microbiome and for your body in general. But vinegar is hard on the liver. Vinegar is hard to process in large quantities. It's okay to use a little bit in your salad dressing or what have you, but um, I always caution people against doing too much apple cider vinegar because sometimes people use that a lot for detoxing. And it is very effective at detoxing. It's one of the things that can really help decalcify your pineal. But it's the kind of thing that I would recommend somebody do for 2 weeks, that you use it and then you stop, that you don't do it long term. So short term for a specific purpose of detox, and then you would not use it long term because it is harsh on your microbiome and on your liver. Yeah, just like alcohol would be. It kind of has the same kind of effect.
Hmm. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another question coming in. Are the mantis beings from Antares?
Mm. So the way that I connect to the mantis is that they don't bring me back to, they didn't originate on a planet. They originated as a thought from source, and they began their journey at very high dimensional frequencies, and they learned how to operate in all of the subsequent frequencies and all the octaves of each one of those dimensional fields. So to me, they originate as a thought or as an idea, as an energy from source, and they come through this stream of energy. So to say that they're from a planet, sure, some of them probably live on that planet, but they live on this planet and they live on other planet. There's 11 other planets like Earth in this sort of Goldilocks zone that support DNA life that they're also nurturing and taking care of. And so yeah, it's to me the planet part is downstream of where they really came from.
Yeah, love that. One thing that's come in recently a lot in the last week or so for me is iodine, and iodine with decalcifying the pineal, but also
Right.
working in a lot of ways to assist, this new wave of plasma light that's coming through and the integration of the upgrades of DNA. But I haven't had the opportunity to really explore too much. I wondered if this is something that you also have been receiving or something that you've worked with before.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring that up because just today, Mari brought up iodine for me with somebody, and I thought, oh, iodine. I haven't thought about iodine in a while, and that's interesting. And it is reflective of the moment that we're in right now, that it is very helpful for um, because she's saying that it's not just our pineal, but it is also helpful with our DNA in general, that it feels like it's, pulling out some of the blocks for our DNA. So I'm glad you brought that up and reminded me. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And not to open the can of worms that I promised I wouldn't open, but I
The
considered,
vaccine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, that's why, that's another reason why I came in, because it was showing, there was this whole kind of expression of this massive matrices. I'm sure that you identified or seen too with, with that technology, and how with where it is in its whole evolution right now, both the
Mm-hmm.
virus and the technology of, of the shot or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
how iodine will play a role in offsetting some of that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. That's probably also why she was bringing it up. Let me just tune into that for a moment. So here's a funny thing that happened today. Also, she actually literally had me laughing today in a in a session because she basically said to me that they don't have the technology to shift your DNA in the way that people think it can shift your DNA. She said the intelligence that went into the manufacturing of this vaccine does not hold that kind of power. But there is a lot of power that gets created out of a belief system that that is what it is doing. And so, but it not to say that there are not toxins in it. And it's not to say that it's not harsh on the body. And it's not to say that it wasn't made in a very rapid and sort of slapdash way, right? And that it hasn't been tested enough. And but she, what she has told me the entire time is that um, it is again, it is everybody's choice about what they're going to do with this. And if you want to get it because you want to travel or you need to go places where you need to have that, then by all means take the measures that you need to do to foster the proper response in your body so that your body doesn't over respond to it and can also clear it quickly. Um, which might sound counterintuitive to people. They might say, well, then why would you ever bring something into your body that isn't the best for it? Because it is, she always pulls me back. This is a moment in time in human history and human evolution. And she always pulls me back to look at the big picture. And she always says to me, look, this is not that important. You guys are placing a lot of emphasis on this because it feels really big to you right now, but it's not that important. Don't worry about it so much. Just do it or don't do it. Either way, you're going to be fine. If you get COVID, you're probably going to be fine. She's talking to me, right? But not everybody has been fine with COVID, right? Some people have really had a difficult time with it. But some people would also have a really difficult time with the vaccine. So you have to know yourself. You have to know your own energy system. You have to know what feels right to you and do what feels right because the belief system that you hold in your body is going to have a bigger impact on the way your body responds to that vaccine or the lack of thereof and the COVID versus, you know, not doing it. So that's the biggest thing is it's our belief system, the way that we process it, the way that we receive it, the way that we flush it out of our system, all based on our current state of energy and our body's ability to process. She told me, like, look, you can get that. It's going to be almost inert and you'll flush it out of your system, not to worry about it. And that was I am vaccinated, and that was my experience. It did not cause really any effect in my body. I didn't notice anything. And I'm very sensitive energetically in my body. And I was just, I felt it to a little degree and I felt a little headachy and I noticed a few things and I could feel my body sort of adjusting. But there's a lot of other things that have been talked about that it does that I just have not resonated with.
Hmm. Okay, thank you so much for sharing.
So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
know and I feel like it's the shame of it and this whole thing is that it's really created um, some different viewpoints that have caused people to really separate from each other. And I think that that's a shame. But I think that's also part of our current moment in time is that people are bifurcating and they're choosing a path. But I really hope that people can choose a different path while also maintaining their neutrality and not do so at the exclusion of other things. It's like choose your path and be done with it and don't make a big deal out of it. Just
Absolutely. I think the neutrality is so important and just respecting and honoring, through that homecoming of the unified field of consciousness, that everybody
yeah.
is a sovereign being here to
Hmm.
have their own unique experience. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That part is difficult. And I will say, as an adjunct to that, that what I do see happening that I really don't like is the AI on this planet. And the AI worries me more than the vaccine. And that is, the whole social control system in China and the scoring system and the way that they're using AI to manage the way that people are viewed and the attachment people have to technology and the way that technology becomes part of the human body, to me, that is a much bigger issue than anything else. And there's probably some people that are pretty confident that the vaccine is part of that whole system. And maybe that is the case. That's not the intelligence that I've been given. But certainly, I do feel the shift in our society towards more and more of that AI acceptance and integration into the human body. And that to me is something that I really turn away from, that I feel is a bigger thing for us to pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as you're mentioning that, they're just showing how already, the electromagnetic frequencies and the chaotic nodes and all the things that are
Yeah,
constantly being, pulsed into our environment are having such a grand impact on our cellular structure. And, so
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, that really weakens our immunity, right? That weakens our microbiome and our immunity, and that's more detrimental than, um, you know, a virus, right? That our microbiome would probably have adapted to, and not everybody would be able to adapt, but the majority would be able to adapt. So, oh, it is a can of worms, but
thank you. Thank you for
yeah,
touching on it. I appreciate it.
sure.
I know our audience does as well, our community. So, um,
Absolutely. One last question that I'd love to ask you is just, in all that has been brought forth and as we navigate this time, just anything that you would recommend or care to share about sort of tapping into that divine spark of creation during this time?
Hmm. Yes, I'm so excited that they're beginning to bring this forward. Let me just tap into them for a moment and see what they have to say about that, because it is really excited. So exciting. They just started to bring that in the last week or so about how we are going to start to tap into this really deep place within us. So when in the beginning you talked about the prime blueprint, it's kind of hard to say, it's a tongue twister. Um, but that energy that we brought into our body when we first came into form, when we first came into this body, when you bring your soul energy in, it's that spark. That is that spark of creation, right? It's that spark of the meeting of energy and physical form. And that spark of creation is an energy and it's a frequency that the Mantis really want us to start tuning into and to start embracing and making part of our overall frequency. And so they're going to bring in a lot of connection into the sacral chakra and the energy of the sacral chakra through the breath. And I don't know if do you both do the breath work? Brooklyn, you do a lot of breath work, right? But do you do that as well, Emily? So the breath, they talked about using the breath to access that place deep within us. And they're always showing me the breath as bringing this beautiful golden energy into the body. So you're basically bringing the energy of the universe into your being and then bringing it all the way down to the sacral chakra and then expanding and opening up that flower of the sacral chakra to help to shift the energy of the root chakra, which can get really caught up in times of dramatic change, of feeling like, you're losing your home or your stability, your finances, whatever, that can all be topsy turvy. And then, so allowing that energy of that creation to flow into that space, and then also into the solar plexus, where we really identify with how we perceive ourselves and how we think the world perceives us, right? And our sort of outward expression, but from the truth of our being, doing that. And so, when that sacral chakra from that divine spark of creation is flowing into those other spaces, and we use the breath to bring the unification of all of that energy, it amplifies the energy, is what they're showing me right now. It's going to amplify the energy in our field, and then we're going to use that bolus of energy to seed our desires, seed our intentions for what we want to energetically match. And then we're going to create that frequency in our body and then go forward and energetically match that and create a signature imprint that you can return to, inhabit, keep amplifying, keep bringing forward. And so that we're on this path of creation this year that is really purposeful, really intentional, and really, instead of just, allowing things to happen to us, really, like we talked about before, engaging in that process, purposefully.
Well, that's so, so exciting. And yeah, gosh.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited about it.
feel
Say.
I was just totally lost in the in the transmission that was going through. Thank you so
I
much.
know. I know. Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Uh, well, we just so loved having you join us and bringing your light and your wisdom and clarity. Thank you so
Yes, it's
much.
been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you. It's so good to connect with you too as well. So enjoyable to speak with you and fun to explore these topics for sure.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for joining us. And we hope that you are able to connect more with Jaylene and her work. And we will certainly send that out with the replay in the email, link to her portal of divine offerings.
Yes, we'll see you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.